Supreme Court dismisses appeal of the People's Democratic Party and its candidate Atiku Abubakar, affirms election of President Muhammadu Buhari in the 2019 presidential election.
Plans underway for improved relations between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia.
More funds for infrastructure in Nigeria's aviation sector.
Senate Appropriation Committee receives budget reports. And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on 60 years of television in Nigeria and Africa.
All right, let's take you down memory lane back to 31st of October in 1959. Now, what exactly happened? It was when Nigeria witnessed her first television station called the Western Nigeria Television, WNTV, located then in Ibadan, southwest Nigeria.
That's right. That pioneering event paved the way, as it were, for other stations in the 1960s. In particular, in 1960, you had the Eastern Nigeria Television. In 1962, the Northern Region also had its own television. The same year that the federal government also had its own television.
And of course, Kingsley, the number of television stations increased in the early 70s. And then we saw a merger, of course, that crystallized into the Nigerian television, or NTV, which again itself evolved into what we have today as the Nigerian Television Authority. And that event happened in 1977. I don't know where I was.
All right, Claire, I mean, part of what you were saying as to what happened in the 70s, you'll recall that there was Midwest Television, which came on stream in 1973, and then a number of other stations sprang up in Kano, in Jos, Port Harcourt, and Sokoto as well. Of course, all of this followed the state creation exercises that had earlier taken place in 1967 first, and then later on in 1976. But of course, in terms of content, the early 70s and the 90s had what obviously some persons with a great deal of nostalgia will refer to as heavy local content that indeed, of course, provoked positive public reaction to, for instance, some of those very popular soap operas such as The Village Headmaster, Cockcrow at Dawn, Mind Your Language, Hotel de Jordan, and others, which, again, some analysts will say were the precursor, as it were, of what today is known as Nollywood, Nigeria's movie industry. Indeed,
and Kingsley, the times you talked about when, of course, we had regional TV stations, I only read about them, but of course I was much aware when, soap operas and, of course, the series of programs came into being, especially like the Cockcrow at Dawn you've talked about. And then that was when 80% of our programming on the NTA featured, heavy local content with, just a minimal 20%, of course, reserved for foreign programs. And we had lots and lots and lots of, series that, in fact, captivated the Nigerian audience. And they gradually, unfortunately, faded away with the advent of private television stations and, of course, the normal 24-hour TV broadcast. And the style of writing, presentation, programming, and all that also evolved through those years, reflecting the impact, should I say, of globalization?
Well, yes, and of course, technology has also had its own intrusion, and the evolution of television services in Nigeria from analog to digital platforms is what is on at the moment, and is being fueled by a surge in the appetite for the video of events as they unfold, and pay TV, in addition to the paradigm shift in the demand pattern of consumers of television services in Nigeria. And by the way, we should also note that it was Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who was then the premier of the Western region, that launched the first television station in Nigeria 60 years ago today. It was also the very first on the African continent.
I remember growing up, Kingsley, I would always go to the Victoria Island, of course, where you had the NTA Channel 10, NTA 2, Channel 5, and we were scrambling for parts, roles in, movies. Then we used to have At Your Service, we used to have Ripples by Zeb Ejiro, and so many. I mean, it was the height of TV broadcast. But of course, that shift, didn't come without its challenges, one of which we talk about today has been fake news. The use of new media technology in TV is also a fallout of evolving habits of consumers. Now, service providers are now confronted with, of course, the gap in infrastructural issues that digital service demands, especially here in Nigeria, where internet connectivity is also slow and expensive, feeding consumer demand for pay TV.
Now, 60 years after television services commenced in Nigeria, is the crave for good content by the consumer being satisfied? And what other areas can managers of the TV industry explore to feed the ever-changing taste of today's very demanding consumers? Claire, you were talking about nostalgia. I mean, the rise in pay TV, for instance, what is now called cable television. In those days, if you needed to watch any of those big matches or any of those big bouts, you had to wait after the fact. You couldn't watch it contemporaneously. There was the satellite station at Lalante, which was the only place where you could download this and then watch it contemporaneously. And not everybody could go to Lalante. So, for instance,
where is that?
Lalante, of course, it's somewhere in Osun or your state. I'm not quite sure. Yes, where the exact location is. That was what was available.
And you were there?
No. I never went there. As I said, you had to wait for delayed broadcasts. You relied on the papers. I mean, Muhammad Ali, for instance, taking on George Foreman in 1974. That was in Isaiah, the so-called Rumble in the Jungle, and all of that big fights.
My favorite,
and then the World Cup.
My favorite, Kingsley, was, I had quite a number of the series and Super Prize. Of course, I loved Wind Against My Soul. I used, and so many soap operas, so good
but
to
a big
remember.
hit also was the Village Headmaster, which is also 50 years. Yes, 50 years, which is 50 years this year as well.
Indeed.
And it's also making a celebration of its golden jubilee.
So you've listened to of course, snippets of what we have today for you on Good Morning Nigeria. I'd like to welcome you all wherever you're watching. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. Again, I am Claire Delabo Abdulrazak, and it's good to be with you today.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to welcome you to today's edition of the program. We are reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. When television started 60 years ago, there were no networks. Okay. Well, of course, NTA remains Africa's largest television network. And in the course of our program today, as always, we'll bring you the complimentary segments. So these include business, newspaper review, and others. For now, let's join Chimobi Walter-Naji for the highlights of the morning news.
Hello, Kingsley and Claire. Good morning. It's good to see you this morning. And good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari is described as welcoming the commitment of Saudi energy company Aramco and Public Investment Fund to explore areas of collaboration with Nigeria towards reviving the nation's refineries. At a meeting with the chairman of Aramco and governor of the investment fund, Yasir Al-Rumayyan, the president said Nigeria has a lot to learn from the expertise and professionalism of the leading energy company.
We've made very good progress, and we are going back very happy. We're going to set up teams. What we have agreed is that we're going to set up teams on our side and on their side, and we will discuss further. They are coming to Nigeria to look at the refineries and the state of affairs of the pipelines, and then we'll take it up from there. Next year, first quarter, we are starting with the rehabilitation of Port Harcourt Refinery.
The Supreme Court has dismissed the appeal of the People's Democratic Party and its candidate Atiku Abubakar challenging the outcome of the 2019 presidential election. In a unanimous judgment, the seven-man panel of justices led by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad, maintained that the appeal lacked in merit.
As lawyers, this is how far we have gone. We can go. And we cannot say anything more than that. We want to appreciate you, members of the press. You've also done very, very well. Well, this country belongs to all of us.
We've done our best. Our clients have done their best. The rest are for Nigeria.
Even if it did, INEC has no right, unless there's an amendment to the Electoral Act, to transmit the results electronically.
Paragraphs and lines having to do with 2019 election, especially the presidential aspect, has been laid to rest.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has formally reacted to the ruling by the Supreme Court of Nigeria dismissing the petition by the People's Democratic Party and its candidate Atiku Abubakar against his election, describing it as a reaffirmation of the will freely expressed by Nigerians through the ballot box. Speaking from Riyadh on the sidelines of the Future Investment Summit, the President promised to sustain efforts at dismantling national development obstacles and taking the country to the greater heights.
They work based on facts, and I'm very pleased that the judiciary has given such confidence to all those who want to to complain about national issues. Look at it. How many parties participated in the election? 91, if you have forgotten. I haven't forgotten. This should mean that the parties should come together so that we have less problems.
Similarly, the All Progressives Congress also welcomes the Supreme Court's dismissal of the appeal filed by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar against President Muhammadu Buhari's 2019 election victory. The party congratulates Nigerians, the President, Vice President, party leaders, members and supporters on the Supreme Court's verdict. The APC, in a statement by its National Publicity Secretary, Lanre Issa-Odilu, said the earlier judgment of the 2019 Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, which dismissed in its entirety the PDP and Atiku's petition, and now the Apex Court hearing, was apt in dismissing the appeal for lacking merit. The party hails the judiciary for standing firm in the face of the PDP and Atiku's subterfuge and for siding with the Nigerian electorate who, through their votes, decided to do away with PDP's past and re-elect the President Buhari-led APC administration, which has ushered in a new era of progressive growth for the country. Nigeria and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has resolved to deepen and expand the highly beneficial relations between the two countries for sustainable development of economies as well as enhanced living standards of their peoples. This was the high point of high-level talks between President Muhammadu Buhari and the Saudi monarchs King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud in Riyadh.
The President was talking about greater Saudi investment in the Nigerian oil and gas industry, and said that, of course, that he, as the Minister of Petroleum, also had relations even in his earlier incarnation as head of state of Nigeria.
The President sympathized with the Saudi Arabian government once again over the incidents in which the oil installations were attacked.
The issues that are spoken convey message of respect to his person and the respect he's bringing to Nigeria.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo Wednesday receives a large delegation of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, led by Deputy Prime Minister Vuong Dinh. As the Vice President notes, Nigeria and Vietnam have maintained cordial relations over the years. The two established diplomatic relations since 1976, but this is about the only time a high-level delegation from Vietnam would be visiting the country. Vice President Osinbajo says the visit of the Deputy Prime Minister is therefore significant, as it would be the beginning of even more stronger ties and several more interactions. Discussion at the meeting centers on various areas where both countries could cooperate, and also to look at the possibilities of setting up a binational commission so that some of the areas of cooperation and ideas could be solidified.
With Vietnam and Nigeria, looking forward to this collaboration.
The federal government has again marched action with words, with more funds released to the aviation sector for provision of critical infrastructure to further improve safety at the nation's airports. This time, approval was given for the completion of road and perimeter fencing at the Port Harcourt Airport. There were also approvals for the installation of scanner at the Apapa Seaport and for the construction of annex office for the National Deposit Insurance Corporation. And various standing committees of the Senate have commenced the submission of reports of their 2020 budget scrutiny to the Senate Committee on Appropriations. Now, this is an indication that the Senate is close to realizing its target of passing the 2020 appropriation bill before the end of December this year. And in other stories, wife of the President Aisha Muhammadu Buhari has urged Africans to desist from stigmatizing women dealing with infertility. Aisha Muhammadu Buhari made the appeal during a high-level panel discussion of African First Ladies on challenges of building healthcare facilities in the African continent. She advocated the need for increased women empowerment, counseling and support for women dealing with infertility. The First Lady underscored the achievement of the Aisha Foundation and promised to assist in curbing stigmatization, depression and abuse. She calls for enhanced empowerment for women through medical support and seed capital for micro and small businesses. The event is the 6th edition of Mark Africa Aisha Luminary More Than a Mother initiative for African First Ladies, co-chaired by First Lady of Ghana, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, and Rasha Khalej, CEO of MAC Foundation. And those are the news highlights for this morning. The program continues with Claire and Kingsley just after the break. Stay with us.
The new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively taking a look at the traditional television and new media. Are they comparable or complementary? Media industry players give perspective on the trends, progress, challenges, and the way forward. Find out on this compelling edition of TV Guide. Expository interviews with stars of the team within our space. Becky Madojemo of NTA, Utibe Umore of AIT, Nifemi Oguntai of TVC, and a host of others. TV Guide, your indispensable companion. Also feature Iya Modina.
I'm the CEO, managing director of Iya Modina Sister Restaurant. I choose to serve. Shut up your mouth. Let me finish.
A TV drama series on NTA. Let's get to meet the characters behind Iya Modina. This edition also presents exciting features on tourism, culture, entertainment, sports, health, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendors near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Hey, bro, what's up, man? Wait. Sure, son, I want the bicycle.
Enjoy more data than before on Airtel Home Broadband. Get up to 160 gigabytes on routers with 25,000 naira and 55 gigabytes on Airtel MiFi's with 12,000 naira. More data, more you. Reliable home broadband by Airtel, the smartphone network.
Want quality sound? Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit 2019 holds on the 6th to the 8th of November 2019. The summit will take place at the Banquet Hall Presidential Villa, Abuja, Nigeria. Theme: leveraging diaspora resources for economic growth. Sectors: agribusiness, education, training, healthcare, entertainment, sports, hospitality and tourism, infrastructure and real estate, manufacturing, extractive industries, telecommunications, technology and innovation, waste management and environmental remediation, transportation. For registration, visit www.ndis.gov.ng. For participation and sponsorship, please call 090-177-77008, 0817-2244-660. Convened by the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission.
An award that has succeeded to pool a galaxy of stars from the north, south, east to the west, and central Africa, and also those that are domiciled beyond the shores of Africa under one roof.
Want quality sound? Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
All right, welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and we're reaching you live from Abuja. Time to check on business news now, and for that, let's join Kunle Ade.
Nigeria is said to have a population of about 200 million, and larger percentage of this figure is constituted by the youth. An entrepreneur, Chukwuma Okenwa, emphasized that the strength of a nation lies in its population, with special focus on the youth. He also advised governments to introduce entrepreneurship at every level of education.
Persons available to serve, you can actually talk about a more impactful GDP. Young persons, the youthful phase is your useful phase. It is said your youthfulness is your usefulness. That's when you have the strength, the freshness of mind, the freshness of ideas.
And the equities market on Wednesday closed on a positive note as Nigeria Stock Exchange All-Share Index appreciated by plus 0.25% to close at 26,310.77 points as against minus 0.53% depreciation recorded previously. Its year-to-date returns currently stands at minus 16.29%. And here is a graphic representation of Wednesday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle, for the business package. Next for us, newspaper review.
It is my pleasure to welcome our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toyibi, who is with us today. Bayo, good morning. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yes, I too. Welcome back on set. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
I've been back since. Kingsley, let's get it.
All right. I have only the Daily Sun newspaper. An earpiece there beside the nameplate. Mena to remain in prison as court adjourns bail here. Details pages 3 and 4. Lead story, of course, is on the outcome of the election petition appeal that's filed against the victory of President Buhari at the Supreme Court. Atiku, that's the kicker, it's finished. 3 riders. Supreme Court dismisses PDP presidential candidate's appeal for lack of merit and affirms Buhari's victory. Nigerian judiciary has been sabotaged and undermined by a dictatorial cabal, says Atiku. Let's move on. That's according to President Buhari. Gunmen abduct appeal court judge, kill police orderly in Benin. That's on page 4. Nigeria and Saudi Arabia commit to oil and gas partnership. Details on page 2. Sarap writes Trump seeks travel ban for governors, jailing journalists and others. So those are the headlines there from the Daily Sun newspaper.
And I have similar stories on the front page of the Daily Trust. So I'll quickly just look at other stories. The lead story on the front page also speaks to the Supreme Court verdict. And there it is. That's the caption. Kingsley read it earlier on. Taking a look at some stories trending just below the nameplate. Federal government lifts suspension at Mexico action against hunger. It's on page 3. Border closure, that's the big one. Nigeria rejects Vietnam's rice importation plea. And unfortunately, 2 children kidnapped in Gombe, found in Anambra, also trending right there. Details of that on page 6. And the picture story, the picture of President Muhammadu Buhari and President Mahamadou Issoufou of Niger during a plenary session on what's next for Africa. That's on the second day of the Future Investment Initiative in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia yesterday. Other stories trending at the bottom. Why Nigeria must emulate Norway's sovereign fund. Details of that on page 18. What we're doing to boost agricultural productivity, Nanano, on page 7. And federal government shops for 11 new palm sacks. Details of that on page 3. Bayo, over to you.
Well, of course, the ruling by the Supreme Court dominates the papers, and the panel of 7 justices led by Chief Justice of Nigeria were unanimous in 4 words. The appeal lacks merit. Therefore, the appeal was disqualified. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Mohammed Tanko, indicated that the Supreme Court had, over a period of 2 weeks, read through the 6 cases and the 66 grounds of appeal before reaching its decision at the hearing. However, they are to give reasons for reaching their judgment at a later day. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar says that the rest is left to Nigerian people to decide. The People's Democratic Party chairman, Uche Secondos, marveled at the court. They did not see any merit in the appeal. Lead counsel to the PDP, Levi Uzoku, says that they will not speculate until they get the details. He, however, asserted that if something drastic is not done to the election jurisprudence in this country, there will be problems. Lead counsel to the APC, Wole Olanipekun, said, all is well that ends well, the matter is settled. Chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, says, when PDP wins in Sokoto, it is justice. But when they lose at Abuja, it is injustice. APC has lost more than the PDP at the courts. They must learn to have faith in the judicial system. President Muhammadu Buhari has reacted, thanking Nigerians from Riyadh, where he was when he had the outcome of the case. He said the case has been settled 8 months ago. He says he thanks the people of Nigeria for the confidence reposed in the party. He also thanked the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar for using the courts as a place to further the case of his rejection about the outcome of the election. It is now time for Nigerians to move on without any need for further distraction. However, prior to the hearing of the Supreme Court cases, coalition of united political parties and the PDP caucus in the National House of Representatives had come out with flying the kite that the panelists at the Court of Supreme Court should be named. They went to the extent of even listing 7 panel justices based on what they claim to be order of seniority. Some other lawyers have countered that that is not in the tradition, and there's nowhere that is so required for the court of the Supreme Court to name the panelists. Lawyers said that this is one of the areas that makes the Supreme Court an aura for which it is the last bus stop for appeals. The panelists also say that it is only the Supreme Court that can listen to a case, give judgment, and later on give its reserved judgment. Some media outfits too also went out of their way. Yes. Some media outfits too also went off their way beyond their legal limits. Some were reviewing the cases and doing what they call creative treatment, documentaries on the cases. And counsels were also interviewed who harped only on their own side of the issues. This went a long way in misinforming members of the public and therefore crossing the borderline of their qualified privileges in covering this. Some run commentaries, which in journalism, it is just purely expressing an opinion, editorializing on the judicial cases before judicial bodies. It must be observed that when cases are before a court, it is sub judice, and such commentaries are unwarranted. And it tends to undermine.
We're running far behind schedule, so we must really speed up. But let me quickly take the editorial, and I think that will be all for the newspaper review today. Or otherwise, I would have loved you to talk about the rice, Vietnamese rice importation plea. But let's quickly look at the editorials. Yes. And the editorial is taken from the Nigerian Tribune, and it's on name. That's, of course, the national identity card and JAM candidates. Just a paragraph or so. That recently the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, indicated that it will no longer register candidates who do not have the national identity number name for the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, UTME. Now, it has warned that beginning with the 2020 examination, only intending candidates who have the name will be registered. And JAM has made this known via a series of tweets that's on his verified Twitter handle. And this paper, that's the Nigerian Tribune, is endorsing JAM's directive on the name and enjoining prospective UTME candidates to adhere to it, and says it is a step in the right direction.
Yes, the editorial is saying that candidates for 2020 JAM will now have to go and register with the Nigeria Identity Management Commission if they don't already have an ID card, and by which they will be given a NIN, that is a 11-digit number, which will serve as their personal identification. And the editorial is saying that, like the BVN that helped eliminate fraud in the banks, it will go a long way in securing every individual. But the challenge, to my mind, is this. If you register for the national identity card, for me, when I registered, it took me almost 3 years before I got my card. Now, has the National Identity Management Council offices in the 774 local government areas to enable JAM candidates go and register now and acquire NIN before they can sit for their JAM exams?
But you can have something like a temporary, identification slip.
Well, the idea of a NIN is to ensure that all systems of identification are put in one central database, so that once you present your NIN, whether it's at the bank, at the airport, or any location, you have one national identification number that identifies you. But the process of getting the national identity card, which is the corollary to getting NIN, is cumbersome.
Well, Bayo, your point is spot on. What we haven't been told is whether JAMB is in liaison with the National Identity Management Commission on how to ramp up registration of potential candidates for the 2020 UTME. We now have over 1.5 million candidates who register every year. We know the slow pace of getting on the National Identity Card registration platform. Perhaps one of the things that both JAMB and NIMSI should do is, okay, we have seen NIMSI officials go to some large establishments where they camp out, if you like, for some days and then urge members of staff or those who are in the organization to come register. You talked about 774 local government areas in the country. Could NIMSI also therefore deploy its officials to secondary schools throughout the federation and say you would need to register only those who are in SS3 anyway, mostly. Who are potential candidates. So register all of those who are in SS3 so that they don't have to miss classes looking for a NIMSI office in the locality where they will spend several hours. But if they camp out for several days in a particular school or a group of schools, it will be a lot easier. But to just say that you have your NIMSI, have your national identification number, if you don't have it, we won't allow you write your UTM. It could create challenges.
If I may, I think there is an effort, towards that, because I know of some, candidates, prospective candidates who have gone to certain areas, designated areas, to register, and they are given a kind of slip, temporary slip, which enables them, according to what I heard, to be able to sit for the exam pending when they get the, permanent card. So I think, in response to what Kingsley said, there may be designated centers where students can go and register. And I know there are centers somewhere in Karu, in Kurudu, MNJ, my axis. Yes, I can tell.
Just go to the schools.
I think is this.
Yes, but there's need for them to go to schools, precisely.
Even registering for JAMB is now computer-based. Most people go and register from cyber cafes.
That's right.
All right, Bayo, I'm afraid we can't take much. Yes, I'm afraid.
Before you wield the yellow card.
No, I won't. Thank you. Thank you for your understanding. All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. Time to begin our conversation, journey into 60 years of television broadcasting. But that will be after the background report by Victor Azo.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
What we are really cultivating here is a better future for all Nigerian women, and it's not always easy. Panadol Extra relieves headache, backache, joint pain, toothache, and menstrual pain. The pain is worth it.
Hey, bro, what's up, man? Wait. Sure, son, I want the bicycle.
Enjoy more data than before on Airtel Home Broadband. Get up to 160 gigabytes on routers with 25,000 naira and 55 gigabytes on Airtel MiFi's with 12,000 naira. More data, more you. Reliable home broadband by Airtel, the smartphone network.
Want quality sound? Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
Television is popular in Nigeria today. The colorful pictures and various entertaining programs create fun moments to share and enjoy, but it has not always been like this. Once upon a time, there was no television. Not until 1959, when the then Western Regional Government, led by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, introduced to Nigeria, and indeed tropical Africa, on a Saturday night, October 31st, 1959, audio-visual signals beamed from the Western Nigerian Television, WNTV, located at Agodi, Ibadan. It promoted the station as a means to educate the people about development and the world. The regional governments of eastern and northern Nigeria and the federal government in Lagos followed and started their own TV stations in the early 1960s. In 1973, a new surge of regional consciousness occurred after the new military government allowed the division of the country into 19 states. This change, the concurrent oil boom, and the effectiveness and importance of existing TV broadcasting led to a new surge of state-owned TV stations. In 1974, Benue Plateau Television, based in Jos, was established and became the first television station in the whole of Africa to launch colored television. 3 years later, in 1977, the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, was born. Dramatic programming like serials and anthology series had existed sparingly in regional television stations before the advent of the NTA. Then, the regional stations, now local affiliates of NTA Network, had TV shows such as Moses Olaya's Alawada on WNTV, later NTA Ibadan, Village Headmaster and Hotel de Jordan on NTA Benin. By 1980, when the new NTA Network took over state-owned broadcasting stations in the country, there was a concerted effort to increase the quality level of local content. The network began giving support to the production of notable countrywide network programs like Tales by Moonlight, Cockcrow at Dawn, and Mirror in the Sun, to mention a few. News programming was the bedrock of NTA's and the government's plan to forge national unity. The broadcaster introduced a new line of newscasters and reporters like Ronke Ayuba, John Momo, Cyril Stober, Bimbo Oloyede, Ruth Opia, Sienna Orwell Brown, and Shola Omole. Specialized news programs like Frank Olize's Newsline were also introduced. Today, television has even become better with private broadcasters in the fray. This, as well as the introduction of the new media technology, has transformed television news and programming, creating active TV platforms even on the internet. How has television changed the country? What has changed and what needs to change? These are some of the questions begging for answers on Good Morning Nigeria today.
All right, now joining us to discuss the 60-year history of television in Nigeria today, we have our guests in Lagos. We'll also be going to Ibadan, Claire, by the way.
Yeah.
But from Lagos, we're being joined by the first Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Engineer Vincent Maduka. Engineer Maduka, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you.
Okay, now once we get our connection to our Ibadan Network Center, we will also introduce another premier official of the Nigerian television industry. But right here with us in the Abuja studios, would like to welcome a former Executive Director of Engineering at the Nigerian Television Authority and also Chairman of the DG team, that's the team in charge of the switchover from analog to digital television broadcasting, is Engineer Edward Amana. Engineer Amana, pleasure to have you with us and good morning.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here again.
Oh, wow, Kingsley. Such nostalgic feeling. So let me also welcome to the studio Executive Director Engineering, NTA, is Stephen Okpanachi, who is also a member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Okpanachi, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I have Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi, who is an Associate Professor and Head of Department Mass Communication at Base University in Abuja. Thank you very much, Dr. Adeniyi, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Wow.
All right. Well, gentlemen, let's begin the conversation. Engineer Vincent Maduka, First Director General of Nigerian Television Authority, remains quite strong. We appreciate your being with us this early, senior citizen. But 60 years on, what are your impressions of television in Nigeria?
Well, you've got some modern engineers there with you who are going to tell us what the technology offers these days. But I started my career as a broadcast engineer, and I've seen a good deal of the changes, but it remains dramatic all the same. To come into a studio like this, the lights are all what I call cold lights. When I entered the industry, you had huge 5 kilowatt, 2.5 kilowatt lanterns that were hitting you because you needed so much light for the cameras that were relatively insensitive in those days. Not only were the cameras insensitive, lighting technology itself was pretty, I wouldn't say crude, but not as good as it is now. You had to heat up wires to very high temperatures in order to generate the kind of light required to illuminate your objects adequately for the ancient cameras that we're looking at, we're using then. So that is one thing that is remarkable. The studio is cool. It was big expense to air condition a studio. First, you spend so much money lighting it up with so many kilowatts. Then you spend so much money removing the heat for the comfort of the people in the studio and also for the health of the equipment. Today, those two problems, I think, are by and large resolved. You don't need a lot of kilowatts now to light a studio, and the cameras are so much more sensitive, and you saved a lot of energy and money on air conditioning. Very basic, very elementary, but something that I can't help noticing. But there are many other areas: the reliability of equipment, the ease with which programs can be made now, and multiple sources of programs all coming in by microwave and such technologies. I heard some reference earlier on to Lanlate Earth Station. I think that one of the earliest uses of Lanlate on television was probably Olympic Games, I think, in 64 maybe, and it was just getting the pictures through to Nigeria was such a great achievement, or at least was a great sense of achievement we had. But today you have satellite feeds up and down practically into people's homes. So that's from the point of view of technology. And as I say, I entered television as an engineer 2 years after WNTV first came on. So I wasn't one of the foundation workers there. I don't know who is, but maybe there are some people still that we may find who were there in 1959. Unfortunately, one of those who was in presentation then died in the last few weeks, Kunle Olasokbe, and may his soul rest in peace.
We're still staying with you for a while, and it's really a great honor to be speaking with you, sir, because I think I was just a young toddler when you were the DG in NTA, coming over to Victoria Island to, of course, do some presentations and all that. But you have talked from the point of view of engineering. Earlier on, Kingsley and I talked about the content of programming in those days and the feelings those content evoked. I'm wondering, could you give us an insight into the type of the content and programming in those years before NTA came on board, and what feeling they evoked?
Let me take the station where I worked, WNTV Bado. And recently I came across the first program schedule. It showed that in a whole day of broadcasting, starting from about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening and closing at midnight, you had maybe, apart from announcements, apart from continuity, that is the studio staff that made announcements and introduced programs and all that. You had a total of about maybe 15 minutes of material that was locally produced, particularly in the news. Everything from start to finish was imported on films, celluloid for that matter. You had news that was ITN, Wire, or AFP, and the first news broadcast had only 15 minutes a day, sourced locally. As for entertainment programs, there was none at all to begin with. But I mean, it's not terribly alarming, seeing that the entire WNTV project, at least from the public point of view, was started and finished in 3 months. So really, there hadn't been a lot of preparation for the event of launching television. A country like Ghana that came about 3-4 years after us learned a lesson. They stockpiled some programs so that the very first day or week of broadcasting, they had some programs which their own film corporation had shot and set aside for television. But we didn't have any. But in no time at all, the general public began to make noises about a station in tropical Africa that almost sounded entirely like an American station. If you wrote out WNTV with its slogan, First in Africa, remove the First in Africa perhaps, and watch that station from start to finish, you could have been watching some local black station in America for all you cared, because everything there seemed to be from America. Well, that was how we started. You had cowboy films, you had things like Laramie, you had things called Mantovani. I wish I could recall all those names. They were all very catchy titles, but nothing hardly was Nigerian. And no time people were beginning to say, hey, what's going on? Can't we have some Nigerian material as well? The news was the quickest to begin to Nigerianize. And the State Ministry or Regional Ministry of Information already had a film crew for making documentaries, and we cottoned on this very quickly to make local news on film. They were all silent. They were negative in the sense that you couldn't, if you projected them on a regular film projector, they would come out black for white and white for black. But you were able to reverse that polarity electronically. So whereas you ran a negative film, it showed positive on air because of electronic tricks that you were playing. But again, you had to process the film locally. It was all very complicated. You needed to watch your chemicals, the temperature, and so it was always a dicey affair, and the quality was not terribly high. But those are the days where you were happy to see moving shadows on air. I used to find a problem visiting friends who had taken a lot of trouble to adjust, to set up their TV sets. First you needed an external area, an antenna at Ibadan. Then you needed to, the TV sets themselves were not terribly stable. They had a lot of adjusting manually and all that. And every time I came to somebody's house, either the picture was rolling slowly or it was not quite synchronized, or one thing or the other. And I remember I would try to go and help the house owner adjust it. And he said, no, please don't touch it. You don't know how long it took me to get it on that stage. And I said, you just need a little more tweak. And when I did it, the pictures were stable. They were very obviously better than we started with. But it was such a delicate thing to set up a TV set at home. Now, you came to the studio to set up your monochrome, your black and white cameras. And the least expensive one was what was called the Vidicon camera. This was not a very sensitive camera. It was, the resolution was not very high, but it was a very practical and lightweight camera. Now, we didn't have solid state or transistor technology at this point in time. So the camera was filled with valves. These were thermionic valves which had to be heated up before they could function. So you generated heat on the camera, right on the camera head. And it wasn't unusual some days for us to have a fan, an electric fan, standing by the camera just to cool it sufficiently to get intelligible pictures out. And
okay, Engineer Vincent Maduga, thank you very much there for the historical perspective you gave to the rise of television from the Western region, that's WNTV, plus the engineering issues that were rife at the time. We'll return to you, of course, in the course of this conversation. Earlier, we did say that we're going to be joined by guests from our Ibadan Network Studios. What is now our Ibadan Network Studios, of course, was the fulcrum of WNTV. Let's welcome Ambassador Yemi Farumbi. He's a former general manager of Nigerian television, and it is also the chairman of the foundation of the Ibadan Television. At some point, he was Nigeria's ambassador to the Philippines. Ambassador Farumbi, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning. And straight away, give us your impressions of the 60-year journey of television in Nigeria and in Africa, of course. All right, now we understand that there are some audio glitches there all right. Okay, right. Once our engineers clear that up, we'll return to our Ibadan Network Studios. But right here with us in the studios, we'll introduce Engineer Amana. Engineer Amana, of course, Engineer Vincent Maduka has already given us a sense of what went on in the past, but tell us also what your impression is in the in the Diamond Jubilee of television in Nigeria.
Well, I was privileged to get onto the Benue Plateau television that went from black and white to color in 1974. I joined them after youth service in 1975. And it was the first color television in this area. Actually, the record has it that a small country, island of Zanzibar, off Tanzania, was actually the first country in Africa to go color. They went color in 1973, before Benue Plateau in 74. As at the time I joined the television services, the excitement was television was going from black and white to color. And as a young graduate engineer, I felt that was a place to be, not for the money, but for advancement of technology. And so we came on under now Bishop Bako used to be an engineer then. Bishop Bako was the one that recruited us into Benue Plateau Television. And we had the likes of late Patrick Itiohe, one of the foundation members there. Our own engineer, Isaac Wakombo, people like Cornelius Ogidi, Dr. Tom Adaba, John Ukonu, Joshua Hassan, and others. Those were the guys who were there before we came in. And these were the guys that we had to learn from. What I've found over the years coming to the present day is that we got into television as pupil engineers. And for the first year of your pupillage, we underwent a lot of training. We had to understudy those who were there before us, learn from them, and then there was structured instruction to bring us to, before we can have hands-on operation of the equipment. And that is something I find that is lacking in television these days. You get in fresh hands from fresh from the university or the polytechnics, and before you know it, they're on the job. So there's some gap in the training, and there's some lack of professionalism over the years. The standards actually dropped. Yes, we are helped by technology. We have better equipment to work with now. Those earlier days, as Engineer Maduka has said, you had a situation where even the studio cameras then that were color, you have to put in some charts to do registration because you have three different tubes to make up the color. You have to register them and do color balancing. Well, today, by a press of a button, you do white balancing and all the colors come up, gloriously. But if I may dabble again into area of programming, at one time, NTA had programs that were must watch. Anywhere you were, if Village Headmaster is on, you must run home or get to where you can have access to television and watch those programs. Today, I don't know if NTA still has any of such in-house production. At a time, staff of NTA were no longer even allowed to participate in the NTA's own program, internal programs. And that made people like late Madazi to leave because they were more passionate about their careers, actors, and so on. So these are the issues at stake. In-house production, now we're going digital. Content is now going to be the key.
Let's hold you there. Put you on hold there and bring in engineer, our executive director engineering, engineer Stephen Okpanachi. You listened to all that has been said so far, but from you, in terms of programming content and technology, how much has TV broadcasting evolved?
Well, I want to see myself like a hybrid. I have the combination of the analog. I listened with keen interest when I heard Engineer Vincent Maduka giving the processes of how they started, and then compare it with what I meant in 1990 and what is relevant today. Basically, I think it's a step in the right direction to my mind, in the sense that technology had really improved. Technology had, to some extent, addressed some of our challenges. For instance, you look at Nigeria, a very large population, different tribes, different culture, different religion, different belief. Then, in the past, only one medium of expression, which is the only NTA. But today in NTA, we have over about 12 specialized network programs. It is because of technology. In the past, they couldn't do that because there was nothing like digital compression to be able to give them that kind of facilities. Then, the greatest challenge now before us is that with the technology you have in place, you should have varieties of programs to address the needs of the mankind. Whatever program we want to design must be tailored to the needs of the environment of the people. And that is what I think is of paramount importance. Yes, like Engineer Mana did said, we have a gap because if you look at orientation, broadcasting is a profession. The fact that I studied electrical engineering in the university does not mean I will know about all those acts and all those techniques. So we really need to pay more attention in that aspect. But definitely, if you look at the changes, during their own days, they were using 3 Plumicom tubes. The tube, you switch them on, you give it some time to heat up, and then you have to get that 6.3 volts for it to work. The cooling system was a challenge, and all those things. But today now, all those things are with solid-state device. There was a time we have charge-coupled device. Now, the technology had even changed. Some of our cameras can record on the system, on the camera. In the past, you must have a different machine linked to the output of the camera. And also, we used to have big TV sets. They call it cartridge rate television. You have flat screens now. You indeed have LED, plasma, and you also have what we call the smart television. In other words, not necessary television. So television is anywhere. Television all in the past, during our days, their days, was in a stationary location. But with your mobile phone and everything, you can have access to television programs. So technology had really improved. But basically, the principles still remain the same. But the only thing is this thing. So in the summary, I would just say technology had indeed changed the landscape of broadcasting. And I think it's a positive direction that the mass communication expert should take advantage of it and come out with content that will be relevant to the needs of Nigeria, so that the programming and whatever we do should be able to uplift our people and put us at the right place.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Kwanachi. We're talking television. The TV set used to be a box, you know, Claire, you recall, black and white with 1 million electrons on the screen. If you switch it on, you will hear the sound, and if the signals went off, you know, that also came on. Sometimes you will see images that are walking across, and everybody is training to catch a good view of it. But all of that has changed now with technology. But we shall also talk about the local content of technology that we're having today. But earlier we introduced Dr. Abiodun Adeni, Associate Professor of Mass Communication at Base University. He's also a political communication expert. Now, 60 years ago, when WNTV kicked off, it was rooted in politics.
Very well.
What has changed?
Well, a couple of things interest me really in trying to respond to your question. One is that 1957 was the time WNTV was launched. That was 30 years after electronic television. After electronic television actually debuted. And it was also 4 years after the color television came in the world at all. And in 1957, compared to 1969, when internet came, our witnessing television was 12 years shy of the coming of the internet. So what this tells me is that Nigeria was not totally lost on the global communications map in terms of our integration into the global the evolving communications technology around the world. 1997, you know, it could have been earlier, but let's not forget that it was under the colonial period. So that we registered it, that we had it in 1957 was actually salutary. Secondly, the fact that it came in 1957 through the instrumentality of an opposition leader, you know, should let us know the advantages in diversity. You know, and that's one thing we need to highlight in a plural, fragile nation like ours, where we are still battling with issues of ethnicity, issues of difference, issues of plurality. Okay, Chief Awolowo was an opposition leader, but he probably was shut out somehow from the national scheme of things at the level of communication. And in the attempt, to find a way out of it, it was inspired to set up the television. And 2-3 years down the line, other regions followed. Competition was rife, and we saw development at the level of communication. That is one advantage I need us to understand. So we can use that as an instruction for us to know that we're a plural nation, we are very diverse, but there's an advantage in diversity. The diversity, as it happened those days, through our political leaders then, resulted into the evolution of television that we're celebrating today. And thirdly, is the fact that, you can equate the history of our television, okay, with the evolution of NTA. That's all right. But we need to also know that over 60 years, it has been playing a very significant role. And what are those roles? We create awareness, education, information, entertainment. Some basic roles, that we talk about in communication. But beyond this role is the fostering of a sense of integration, what Benedict Anderson called the emerging community. And that emerging community may be an intangible, but it has helped to a very large extent in reinforcing our integration, in highlighting our commonness, and in bringing us together through unity unity of purpose, in our desire for programs, in our desire to watch television, in our desire to long for programs like some of the very experienced engineers here have said. There were content that people were passionate about in those days. I remember Checkmate, I remember Kokoro Down, and many of them, and actors, okay, coming up and doing some very wonderful programs. It ended up integrating us directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, as a people. There are still challenges, there are still miles to cover, there are still steps, to climb. But we haven't done badly. Television or communication equipment has not done badly in this climb at the level of integration, fostering a sense of commonness. Those are the initial points I think I need to let us know, sir, from my own humble perspective.
All right, let's get back to Lagos, where we have the first DG of the NTA, Engineer Vincent Maduka. I'm sure you have listened to all our talks here. But if we consider TV broadcast or television broadcast as a medium of information dissemination through the different program formats, in evaluation of performance so far, are we lost on our objectives?
Well, are we lost on our objectives means that we have stated objectives. I think different people probably have different objectives to what they're about, what they were doing. I had endless problem with governments. In fact, WNTV was a hotbed of politics on television. If anybody takes the trouble to research WNTV in its essentially it came about in 59, not 57. Not a terribly important thing, but just to keep the record straight. Now, between 59, when WNTV came up, and 73, when I became general manager there, we had about 10 chairmen. Because the politics of the West, of course, was really, let me put it mildly, by saying it was exciting. You had Operation Wetier, where we had to remove logos from our WNTV vehicles because they could be attacked by people who set out to burn down our vehicles because of the unpopularity of the station. The station was siding at a point with a government that was palpably unpopular. And so the TV station itself was drawn into very serious politics at that time. Of course, the owners of the station would tend to demand that the station toes their line. I suppose it's to be expected. And of course, the more liberal a society, the less of that kind of pressure. So politically, TV station, media organizations are irretrievably drawn into the politics of their societies. So what are the objectives? The politician wants to use television for his own purpose. Nigerian media organizations, particularly the broadcasting ones, adopted British liberalism, and in all the TV and radio stations in the country that were state-owned, the law establishing them said they were to be independent, they were not to pander to any political party, and they were to be neutral in political and industrial matters, written down. And when I quoted this to a chairman, political, he told me that it's colonial stuff. I said, colonial, why don't you change the law first? He says, you tell me that it's going to be independent. How can you be independent? So that's why I asked, what are the objectives? Are the objectives what you have in the minds of politicians, or the objectives are what they've written down as a guideline for the nation? But that's as far as taking sides is concerned, because there's a lot of communication that is not necessarily controversial and political. So you have, when we went to the cinema in those days, we went to watch American movies. Some British, later on Indian films were coming on. But the TV set, which really for the man who invested in it was a home cinema, showed again foreign films and foreign programs. And very quickly, protests began to, well, not violent protests, but murmurs as to why we can't have Nigerian programs. And I know very much that the three earliest regional stations, Ibadan, Enugu, and Kaduna, moved in to make local programs and use Nigerian language programs to project their messages. We had to have, in the case of the West, for instance, we had community viewing centers, and I think they also had in the North, because you've set up this thing, it's so expensive for the ordinary people, and therefore they were cut off from TV. So one of the things that happened was that TV community centers were set up for people who couldn't afford TV sets to go and watch. And in fact, in the large communities where somebody had one TV set, crowds of people came round there to watch. So the objective and the extent to which it met those objectives are things that we need to really try and define before we can move forward on that area. Thank you.
Okay. Engineer Vincent Maduka, I just wanted to get another perspective. Claire, I'm not sure if you experienced that when it was talking about community view centers and the scarcity of TV sets. Then children, you found them, craning their necks, through the window of a neighbor to watch TV. But it's still, because this is a historical excursion we are having today. Now, the Nigerian Television Authority is the largest network we have in Nigeria, and by far also the largest network we have on the African continent. But it wasn't always like that. You became the first Director General. Give us a sense of what happened, because WNTV itself, MTV, which was Midwest Television, set up by the late Samuel Ogbemudia in Benin, and indeed the other state stations, to which one of which Engineer Amana has also referenced, were taken over by the military administration. In other words, this was almost compulsory acquisition of state assets. What was the rationale behind that? Because you were, shall we say, the first inheritor of that exercise.
Well, the military don't owe us any explanation, or didn't owe us any explanation. But their argument was that they were going from I believe we were 12 states to 19 in 1977. I won't swear by the figures. But when General Murtala Mohammed came to power, he announced that he was going to create more states, and he immediately followed, well, from our own point of view, with a statement that those states were not going to go around building their own new television stations afresh for reasons of economy and for whatever reasons. But therefore, all the existing TV stations were going to be amalgamated to serve the whole country as one organization. I was at WNTV Ibadan. I was the general manager. I didn't think it was a good idea because I was running a station and we were going to take over that station. So presumably I was afraid for my own neck or whatever was going to happen to me. But that apart, it was exciting to run a station, and suddenly somebody makes an announcement that he's going to take over your station and you're not going to be in charge any longer. So there were protests in a few areas, certainly at Ibadan. We wrote position papers, we tried to explain. I put an argument for that in 2 years, WNTV would be breaking even. And so it wasn't a question of economy. We were running as seriously as possible as a commercial organization. So the main reason for the amalgamation was from the point of view of the military dictators, that the question of economy, that was what they put forward, and to reduce proliferation of resources. Now, since you are looking for reasons, the military don't have time for everybody, for democracy, and everybody saying their minds. All of you must come together under one command. That's the way I saw it at that time. And so in May 1977, all stations, in fact, before then, we started adopting a new name for each station prior to the amalgamation. So WNTV Ibadan became not NTA Ibadan, became Ibadan Television, or Ibadan, what was it now? NTV Ibadan, or something like that, before the final amalgamation when we took on the name NTA. But that was the reason that proliferation would not be allowed, even as the country was now divided up into more states. So at the point when NTA came into being, there were 10 stations, 8 of them active, and 2 were being installed, Calabar and Ilorin.
Engineer Vincent Maduka, for your thoughts. We'll keep you on hold for the moment and return to our studio here. And let me take up Engineer Mana. Engineer Mana, I'd like to read out some programs. Let's now begin to go into the local content. Programs that caught, like fire. Everybody wanted to watch. Like Kingsley, said he wanted to rush home and, catch a glimpse of these programs. Cockroach Dawn, Akada Campus by Bode Shwande. We know of Winds Against My Soul, very popular by Laulu Guni, and the montage then was captivating. We also had Mirror and the Sun by Lola Fani Kaode, Behind the Clouds, and then we had Mind Bending by, again, Lola Fani Kaode, Ripples, Checkmate, and all that. These are some of the programs, locally produced by the NTA, and then as NTA, became partly commercialized, we saw a cascading downwards of more local, content programming. Now, if we look across board, both private TV stations and all that, what do you think is responsible for this? Because we now have, apart from the NTA that, of course, still, has a more local content programming, other TV broadcasts have more of the foreign, content. What do you think has happened?
Well, the fact of the matter, let me take it first from perspective of the NTA. There came a time in the history of NTA where we started bringing in some cheap telenovelas Maria de Los Angeles, and all of those, which, well, mainly with the housewives were popular, but that eroded the internally produced programs of the NTA. Well, maybe because, I don't know whether it was a case of lack of funds to produce local programming, and the fact that those Mexican soap operas were coming at a very cheap rate. I really can't understand. But all those popular programs you mentioned were produced by NTA staff. Today, do we have a drama department in the NTA that is still actually producing dramas today? I can't remember any recent dramas coming out of this table. Now, the private television stations that came in after the liberalization of broadcasting in Nigeria, a lot of them are more or less after the money, commercialization. There's no gainsaying the fact that it costs money to produce quality programs. And a lot of them don't want to spend that kind of money in producing quality programs. And so they take solace in talking heads and then some ready-made programs from outside the country, which they can acquire at very cheap rates as compared to actually producing their own programs internally. And the other sad part of it is that there's a lot more we could do with what we have in the country. You go to the streets, sports especially, you go to the streets now, you find fans of EPL. You have Arsenal fans, Chelsea fans, and all of that, to the extent that they're even fighting. How did all this get into our country? It's television. What made the EPL popular is the television that promotes those sports. And over the years, we have failed in that aspect, in uplifting our own sporting events. Nigeria has a league. Do we show the Nigerian league? At a time, NTA actually bought rights to do it, but there was so much of opposition, both from even then, our own then minister, who said, we have no business going to buy the rights for Nigerian football. I mean, who else was going to uplift our games if it's not us, the broadcasters in this country? So there's a lot of things we need to actually go back and reorientate ourselves. What are the objectives of television? Are we actually achieving these objectives by foreign programming? So these are the fundamental things that we still need to do.
All right, Engineer Mana, thank you very much there for your perspective. Luckily, we understand that the gateway to Ibadan has been cleared. Ambassador Yemi Farumbi, if we can see you on the screen now and if you can hear us, maybe we can speculate that the gods at Ibadan do not want us to come over to you because that is the citadel of television broadcasting. But straight away, I asked the question earlier, just give us your impressions of television in Nigeria 60 years on.
It is. Television is 60 years old. And
the gods are not to blame today. We'll have the opportunity. I hope our engineers are able to clear that up. It looks like we are back to 1959, actually, for today's conversation. But Engineer Okparachi is here. He's our executive director. These glitches happen from time to time. But straight away, there's an aspect that I would like us to also talk, because it has, relationship with content and also technology. Before 1992, there was a constitutional provision amended by military decrees and otherwise that forbade private ownership of radio or television stations. But after 1992, that changed. And then we now saw the advent of private radio and TV stations. But our focus today is on television. Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi, what has been the paradigm shift with the advent of private television since the deregulation of the sector in 1992?
Well, very interesting, really, and actually beyond the interesting reminiscing of the legendary engineers around us here, is the fact that it is just try to say that private television station, is a way of providing alternative views. There's this perception out there that if it is NTA, then it is government. That government uses NTA essentially to set agenda. And of course, we know that there might not be anything criminal about agenda setting if government thinks that, it is well-meaning with policies and policy directions. Agenda setting is legitimate in communication and information dissemination. But to what extent is that agenda, can it be equated with propaganda? Is it anti-people? Is it an anti-people agenda? If it is not anti-people, if it is tailored towards growth and development, peace and progress of a nation, then it is salutary. But the line between an agenda that is positive and the one that is negative is always very difficult to discern, really. And in the military setup, like we saw in the past, it can actually be very, very problematic. Most of the time, it tends towards the negative because it tends to stifle opinion, to muffle views, like Engineer Maduka, insinuated at some point there. But the fact that we now had private TV stations, opened up the space for conversation. Alternative views could now be had. And of course, people had more choices, because information dissemination is about choices, We did not want, to be pigeonholed into one channel alone. People could now choose. And of course, the range of choice is actually expanding with the gains we are making in digital media, actually expanding. And what he said earlier is also very trite, because television is not just that stationary object anymore. It's on the go. It's very portable, very flexible. Smartphones at television stations as well. And some of these days, you do not even have to claim that you are the sole broadcaster. There are multiple disseminators, multiple owners of TV station, and multiple reporters, multiple levels of reporters and publishers. It's no longer the sole preserve or the exclusive preserve of government. So the space has been completely liberalized beyond government laws, beyond government regulation. This is okay, this is all right, it's an epitome of development, it's a signpost of progress, because freedom is integral to development. Freedom to think, freedom to talk, freedom to express, and freedom to speak is very, very important to development. Development shouldn't just be seen at the level of structures, at the level of infrastructures and utilities alone, but at the level of thoughts and the ability to render your ideas, the ability for intellection is very integral to development. So to that extent, we will say that, okay, the private stations have provided this alternative. But to what extent, really, have they been able to go beyond commercialization? To what extent have they been able to look beyond profit sharing to deliver the social responsibility item of their mission? That's a question that we'll probably need to also answer. But we do agree that some of them have been very, very outstanding. We've seen some of them winning awards. We've seen some of them actually giving NTA a run for their money. And this should actually be commended. We'll see it as part of the progress of a nation. And I think we still have steps to cover, like I said earlier. But we haven't done badly at the level of using communication, using television to build our nation, as it were.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adeniyi. The regulation fostering competition is part of the points you just made. Well, one more time, we want to go to Ibadan, the city of seven hills. Ambassador Yemi Farumbi, give us your story of television in 60 years and what Ibadan represents in this journey.
It has been a great thing from 31st October 1959. Commissioning that station, the then regional premier said television will be used as a teacher and as an educator and indeed as an entertainer. But more importantly, he emphasized that television will be used to make Nigeria a prosperous nation. So from the word go, television has been designed to serve the nation. It has been designed to uplift the nation. economically, culturally, politically, and educationally. It was not designed for Ibadan or Western region alone. It was seen as a national monument. Make Nigeria become a big star in the firmament of Africa. And over these years, a lot had changed. One of the greatest things that had changed had been technology. Of course, in 1960, August, when we did our first drama, titled My written by Wole Soyinka, produced by Segun Olushola, we didn't have the capacity to even record the program. In a very small studio meant for a discussion program, we had to put a drama production out. But then all of that had changed. Moved from the studio into the one camera approach, and we have done great cameras, not only great television drama, not only in Ibadan but all over Nigeria. One thing that must be emphasized is that the kind of federalism that we ran in 1999 was a competitive federalism. So as soon as Ibadan started, Enugu started. Ibadan was first in Africa, Enugu was second to none. 2 years thereafter, Kaduna started. 2 years thereafter, Lagos started. So we saw a national instrument of ushering prosperity. And of course, apart from the changes in technology, you will have noticed that the quality of staff had tremendously improved. Because at that time, all you needed was a minimum of school certificate, face, and a good microphone boy. But beginning from about 1966-67, Nigerian television all over has started an intellectualizing process, which meant that they were recruiting more intellectually sound people, more academically, because television saw itself as a crusading force, a force to change Nigeria, a force to show Nigeria where it is, a force to show Nigeria where it should be, a force to show what Nigeria should do to reach where it should be. And that is why monuments like Kokoro Ador, Mirror in the Sun, that came much later. So over these years, television has served its useful purpose of binding us together. But one thing that we must also not forget as we look at television is the fact that the audience has changed. The quality of audience has changed. They are no longer a monolithic audience. They are now much traveled, they are much educated, they are much exposed. So, and that means educating them and informing them, you have to be on your toes all of the time. And finally, I want to add, the greatest problem that Nigerian television faces, or indeed NTA is facing, is the competition. We were a monopoly. 1959 were a monopoly. 1957 we were a monopoly, but we are no longer a monopoly. The monopoly has been broken not only because we have private television, but because if you sit in the comfort of your room now, you can have access via satellite to as many as 200 stations. Some value in our culture, some of them they value our tradition, some of them antithetic to what Nigeria should hold. And there is no technological way of holding this. In 60 years, I believe television has done well. We might not have been what we wanted to be, but this has been because of the changes in technology, the changes in audience, and in the changes in the society.
Far away, just one question from me to you. If you watch the screens of TV stations across board now, irrespective of whether they are private or public, are you pleased, are you satisfied with what you see in terms of content?
Obviously, I'm not very pleased. And this started from the very, very, very beginning. There is no country that started television without an established film industry, because that meant that they had a private sources to rely on to buy canned program. This was not so in Nigeria. Television preceded film. Television and developed theater. So it has been difficult to source programs outside the television service. You find that the television stations have had to do all the programs themselves. If we are going to be what we ought to be, then we have to improve on absolutely on the content. But then, for NTA as a public service, the kind of content that a public service television does is not the same as the content that a commercial private owned station will do. The private station can find the denominator of entertainment, but public service station cannot do that. And because it cannot do that, it cannot rely on outside sources, sometimes for educational program, for public enlightenment program, for political program, for news program, on its own.
Oh, what a shame. Ambassador Farumbi, pity that we lost you. I wanted to ask you a question, but I would go over to our Lagos Network Center so we can bring on Engineer Vincent Maduka to respond to this question before we come back to our guests in the studios. Engineer Maduka, I asked the question about what has been the landscape of television broadcasting since it was deregulated in 1992. That's one. But Ambassador Farumbi touched on something, content generation. We have the Nigerian Film Corporation in Jos. Why is it that there is no proper linkage between that corporation and local demand, say from NTA and indeed other local stations? What do you think is missing?
It's easy for me to say I don't know, because the Film Corporation has made, in my opinion, very, very little impact on the either educational or entertainment areas of film. I don't know when the last time I saw any film at all designated Film Corporation production. So this is not to castigate them, but we never took any notice of them at either at NTA. WNTV, we had a collaboration with the Ministry of Information because they had more film equipment than we did. But throughout my time at NTA, the Film Corporation, I visited the place before, and I even had talked to the director then about the possibility of our bringing films to process there, because they had very elaborate facilities for production. But from the point of view of creative work or even documentaries out of the corporation, I really don't know what their brief was, and I don't know what their products were. But we at NTA, we tried to do everything. As Yemi Farumbi has just mentioned, we didn't have an infrastructure of film or visual entertainment in this country. Compared to Egypt, for instance, Egypt was already the film hub of the Middle East before they started television sometime after WNTV. The Egyptian film industry provided great works for the Arab world. Besides, Egypt had a thriving tourist entertainment industry. So television was drawing from existing facilities, existing culture. In Nigeria, we had to develop a professional entertainment industry. Ibadan had a fair advantage over many others, with people like Ogunde Theatre and similar performers who were traveling entertainers. So we drew very quickly on those facilities. But the country didn't have a foundation for the kind of material that television thrives on. So we've had to make all this ourselves. Yemi talked about the difference between public service broadcasting and commercial broadcasting. A good reference point there is Britain. The BBC did not set out to make money. So it concentrated on what you might call national values, culture, development, and the projection of what they would call the values of their country. It doesn't mean that you pander to mere propaganda, because nobody will be watching you if you are talking to yourselves. People don't buy TV sets to be lectured at. So but your accent and your priority is not how to make money. I don't want to disparage commercial organizations. They were not there as charity organizations or social organizations. They are there to make money. They are there in business. If they are not popular, they will not make money. If they are not credible, they will not make money. I had to argue with authorities before government that if your station has no credibility, what money you spend on is wasted. So you have a situation where even if you wanted as government or a party or a politician to tell lies, you better go to a credible station to tell your lies. If you've discredited your own station and they say, oh, that government station, even when you're telling the truth, they will not believe it. So establish credibility, and maybe then you can come and tell lies. I'm teasing here. But people with power don't want to share the power, and they don't have knowledge quite often, and they want to impose their ignorance on broadcasters, on media operators, and say this is how you must do it. So the result is that you are not credible, and even when you are telling the truth for government or for the party, people don't believe it, except, of course, what you call believers, who are, whatever you tell them, they will accept. So, but that's going to what we should not be doing. Maybe we should concentrate more on what we should be doing.
So, Engineer Maduka, thank you. I have one question for the Executive Director Engineering, and I'm sure, Kirsty, you also have one question. Now, if you look at, broadcast stations across board, especially foreign TV stations, you discover that they have migrated deep into digital broadcasting. If you look at, the NTA specifically, and maybe generally, are we lost on the map?
Thank you very much. We are not really lost on the map. You recall in 1999, when we did Nigeria 99, we came up with MPEG-2, and that was the latest technology. But today, 2017, when we resume, we discovered that is obsolete. And I'm happy today that we are on MPEG-4, but some may even want to challenge that we have something higher than MPEG-4. The strategy is to come up with a body of knowledge, tech engineers that will be equipped with the technologies of today and that of tomorrow. Basically, what we intend to do is to apply the ICT technologies. Broadcasting is going IP-based. Nobody spends so much money on satellite broadcasting again. If you have 5G, 4G technology, which they're doing a lot of research there, it's going to be cost-effective, and it will have a higher efficiency and a better, reliable, resilient. Like the challenge we are facing at Ibadan now, when we couldn't listen clearly to the audio, the new technologies have resilience to propagation of signals that will be able to address that. I believe, by the grace of God, that is the direction of NTA. We try to acquire all those latest technology and then equip our younger engineers with the basic necessary skills. And I'm so happy today, majority of the younger engineers, they are computer literate. So every of the broadcasting technology today is based on that foundation. So it's going to be another added advantage. And the second benefit in utilization of modern technology, you are going to reduce cost of operations. You listen to Engineer Visa Maduga, did talk about how they had halogen lamps, 4 kVA, 4 watts, 5 watts. We don't need those ones. Light emitting diode. There are some lights now, which is the latest. Not even this one. Just one light with reflectors. Just one light with reflectors. So the consumption is lower. So in other words, the thinking of NTA is that in future, we may not use the generator, public power supply, national grid. We could use the solar renewable technology, because at that point, you will have the digital terrestrial transmitters, so that will not consume so much. So I think the future of NTA is really bright. The technology will be able to address majority of those challenges we are facing today.
All right, Engineer Kwanachi, thank you very much. Let's go over to our Ibadan Network Center again and try to get the closing thoughts of Ambassador Yemi Farumbi. Ambassador Yemi Farumbi, this of course has to do with the future of television in Nigeria against the background of the deluge of foreign content and the inherent cultural imperialism and all of that. Do we have the capacity to respond and indeed tell our own story and get ourselves truly on the map?
Well, I'm persuaded that we can't cope with the future, but there are things we have to do. Basically, we have to place a greater emphasis on training. We have to more availabilities for trading, more opportunities for trading, more institutions for professional training. I'm not talking of academic training of the master's or the first degree or the HNDs in mass communication, but I'm talking about the adaptation of the academics into the profession. We have to be able to do that. And we have to be able to put more funds into content production, creating more content-making companies that will be outside the television stations themselves. But I believe that, and as I meet a lot of broadcasters, and as I talk to them, and I look at the quality of who they are, I believe that Nigeria is ready and can cope with the future of television, and that can, in fact, give Nigerians and the world a television that we all.
All right, Ambassador Yemi Farumbi, would like to appreciate you. We apologize to our viewers and also to you for the glitches we had earlier. God cleared it up, and we are really very grateful for your insights in our conversation this morning. Okay, now, just before we let the other guests go, we're taking a short break now, pretty close to the end of the program.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
About to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and the talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
All right, you're welcome back. And just to acknowledge that we have a number of tweets that have come in. Most of the tweets, of course, are extolling the advent of television, which is 60 years today in Nigeria. Claire, let's take some of those tweets and then acknowledge the others that we cannot read. A number of our regulars, of course, have the Asamogbala Ombab, Zile Jack Solomon, and several.
And of course, some of them commending the NTA for being the mother of TV broadcasting in Nigeria, specifically Daily Jack Solomon. It's your tweet. You said you can't talk about 60 years of broadcasting in Nigeria without talking about the NTA. It's the mother of all. And it all started in Ibadan, Oyo State. Congratulations to NTA and other broadcast stations in Nigeria. May all broadcast stations continue to serve public interest well.
Now, Okpikumo Augustine tweets, the evolution of television contributed to my formation through TV programs like Tales by Moonlight, Hotel de Jordan, and so on, while I was a growing child. Moving forward, I would like TV stations to air programs that will encourage self-development and reliance.
And Ishaq Abdullahi tweets, television has no doubt impacted positively on the lives of Nigerians, especially the NTA, that has tried over these years to balance its programs. We need to see more of historical documentaries and more of children educational programs.
Okay, all right. Francis Obi also has a tweet. Laura Fasi, Adejumo Olubumi, Badamasi Adamo, Mike Anyakwo, and Cecilia Okoroma, and several others. We appreciate your tweets that have come in today. And of course, it's on that note, we'd like to thank all our guests who've been with us. It's been a historical excursion with a peep into the future. From our Lagos Network studios, we were joined by the first Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Engineer Vincent Maduka, who himself was a staff at the first television station, that's to say the WNTV. Engineer Maduka, thank you very much for your contribution. And then also here in our studios, Engineer Amana, former Executive Director Engineering of the Nigerian Television Authority. Thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you for having
We
me.
also would like to appreciate the incumbent Executive Director of Engineering of NTA, that's Engineer Stephen Okpanachi. Thanks a lot for being part of our discussion. Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi, Head of Department of Mass Communication, based University of Abuja. Thanks a lot for being around.
My pleasure, sir.
Okay,
All
so...
right. Yes, that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. Do join us same time again tomorrow. I am Claire Dilabu Abdulrazak. Bye-bye.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola. Program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Have a wonderful day.